In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
You concerned about what keto will do to your cholesterol? Many people believe eating fat, especially saturated fat, will raise their cholesterol levels and put them at a greater risk for developing heart disease. And doctors reinforce this by making a big deal about high cholesterol requiring a statin medication to lower it. But this is half-century-old thinking. Newer research shows triglycerides on a standard lipid panel are a much better indicator of your current state of heart health. These blood fats are the truly bad cholesterol that are a direct reflection of your carbohydrate intake. Aim for triglycerides under 100. Cut your carbohydrate intake, eat more real food fats, and your heart will be happy and healthy.
Simplified short-form keto videos found exclusively at ketowhiteboard.info. Watch it, share it, live it.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. And if you're brand new to Jimmy Rants, here's how the show works. The most unique show on the internet. Start off over at Instagram. That's where we start, but JimmyRants.com is the website, by the way. We start on Instagram, do a couple of live videos every single day, so go follow me there at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live in the content, just like all my Jimmy Rantsers who are here right now. Welcome in, guys. Thanks for being here. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours, but after 24 hours, for some inexplicable reason, Instagram makes it go away. But we got you covered. We throw all the past episodes up on YouTube, so go look up Jimmy Rants on YouTube. You will find the show. Finally, the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form, which is what I'm most known for, my voice. But you guys are my fans here on Jimmy Rants as well. So thanks for being here. But go find the Jimmy Rants podcast if you like listening rather than watching. Jimmy Rants on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. And all of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants is one I wish I didn't have to share with you, because there are a lot of forces at play right now trying to counter what is obviously a huge move in the direction of low-carb ketogenic diets. And so because of the popularity of keto, which is much bigger than any dietary movement that's happened in decades, it's huge, you guys. Bigger than paleo. It's rivaling up there with what the Atkins diet was having in the early 2000s. It's a big deal, and it's got a lot of people worried, and people in places of power are putting strategies in place to try to temper the enthusiasm for keto. And so what we're going to talk about here today is there is a brand new statement that was put out by the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology. Those two, the AHA and the ACC, tend to work in tandem. And what they do is they try to put out cholesterol guidelines, which we talked about on a previous Jimmy Rants, but now they've come out with what they describe as their lifestyle guidelines. And guys, it's 2019. They're coming out with their lifestyle guidelines, which includes a section on nutrition, which we're going to talk about here today. But these guidelines that are put out by a big organization like the American Heart Association, these are the precursor to what we're going to see in the 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans. So that's why we want to talk about this today. This 2019 AHA ACC lifestyle guidelines is a precursor to 2020 dietary guidelines, and it ain't pretty for low carb diets. All right, so let's get into this. So under nutrition is the category. Here is what the AHA ACC lifestyle guideline states. Dietary patterns that are associated with CVD, cardiovascular disease, mortality, meaning death, include sugar, low-calorie sweeteners, high-carbohydrate diets, low-carbohydrate diets, refined grains, trans fats, saturated fats, sodium, red meat, and processed red meat like bacon, salami, ham, hot dogs, and sausage. All right, let me back up. I'm going to keep reading here in a minute, but let me back up. Dietary patterns that are associated with deaths by cardiovascular disease. Did you catch all that? Sugar. Yep, I can see that. Hey, at least they recognize sugar as an enemy. Low-calorie sweeteners. Are they talking about what? Splenda? Aspartame? Even stevia? What are they talking about there? High carbohydrate diets. Well, yeah, we know very much so high carbohydrate diets, which includes a lot of sugar, can be a contributor. Low carbohydrate diets. So they've lumped in low carb with high carb, with sugary diets, with low calorie sweeteners, and then refined grains, trans fats, saturated fat, sodium, red meat, and processed red meats like bacon, salami, ham, hot dogs, and sausage. Do you guys see a problem with this? Do you see how they are trying to control the narrative here? Can you see? And again, if you're just joining us, we're talking about this brand new lifestyle guidelines put out by one of the biggest groups in America related to cardiovascular health, heart health, the American Heart Association, along with the American College of Cardiology. And they've put out these lifestyle guidelines just 1 year before the U.S. Dietary Guidelines for Americans comes out. Guys, this is a precursor to what we're going to see next year when those dietary guidelines come out. And this ain't pretty because they are lumping together sugary diets, high carb diets, refined grain diets, trans fats with low carb diets, saturated fat, sodium red meat, and processed red meat like bacon, salami, ham, hot dogs, and sausage. This is utterly disgusting. And we need to be aware they are deliberately doing this, you guys, as a way of disparaging a perfectly healthy diet. There is no science to support that dietary patterns that are associated with greater death from cardiovascular disease comes from a low-carb diet. How many people that go on a low-carb ketogenic diet are dying from that of heart disease? How many? Do you have the randomized control clinical trial that's showing us that people that get in a ketogenic state are having deaths happen from cardiovascular disease? Are we seeing it with a saturated fat diet, primarily saturated fat diet? Are we seeing it with a red meat diet? That's pretty much all I'm eating right now is red meat and animal-based foods. This is preposterous, guys. But let me keep reading. This is their recommendation. All adults should consume a healthy, plant-based or Mediterranean-like diet that is high in vegetables, fruits, nuts, whole grains, lean vegetables. Are they talking about non-fatty vegetables? By lean vegetables? I've never seen lean vegetables. Or lean animal proteins, preferably fish, as well as vegetable fiber. All of these things have been shown to lower the risk of all-cause mortality, that means death by any cause, compared to the control or the standard diet. Guys, I have said this before on Jimmy Rants. They are trying to push us all towards veganism. That is their stated purpose. They want us all to eat plant-based. And I'm sorry. They can try as they may, but you will have to pry my red meat out of my cold, dead hands, because I ain't giving up red meat. Red meat's giving me so much benefit right now, since it's primarily what I'm eating in my keto carnivore diet. For them to say all adults should consume a healthy plant-based or Mediterranean-like diet high in veggies, fruits, nuts, whole grains, lean vegetables, and lean animal proteins, preferably fish, along with vegetable fiber. None of that falls within what I want to do. And what I've seen is making me optimal. How do they deny people that see benefit not eating lots of fruit? How do they ignore the benefits that people see of people who do not eat lots of healthy whole grains? This is just disgusting to me. And the evidence that they're showing that it's shown to lower the risk of all-cause mortality compared to the controller standard. Were those randomized controlled clinical trials? If not, if they were epidemiological studies, or if they were simply observational studies, those are only information theory gathering type of data. We can't use that kind of evidence from the scientific circles. It's not valid for human application. The only science that is valid to human application, and I will repeat this until I'm blue in the face, and all the plant-based apologists will say otherwise, but the only good science when it comes to trying to, parse this out is randomized controlled trials. And they haven't done that. Not on this. If you're just joining us, there's a brand new 2019 American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology lifestyle guidelines that just got released. And I am reading from the nutrition portion of that. And you might be like, well, nobody cares. What is this? Nobody cares about this. The reason it matters is this heavily influences what ends up in the dietary guidelines 1 year later. So next year, there's a dietary guidelines committee that will release the brand new dietary guidelines for Americans, which in 2015 relaxed standards about cholesterol, saying that cholesterol is no longer a nutrient of concern. So people have obediently started eating more eggs and other cholesterol-rich foods. And I think they're trying to rein that back in again. And then to vilify now in these lifestyle guidelines, to vilify red meat and to vilify saturated fat and vilify sodium, and they list very specifically low carbohydrate diets. All of these things are supposed to increase your risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. I'm sorry, AHA, ACC, but I am warding off cardiovascular disease, which runs in my family, by the way. I have a deep, strong genetic family history of heart disease with a brother that died at 41, a dad with 2 heart attacks and a quintuple heart bypass surgery, both grandfathers dying of heart disease in their early 50s. It runs strong in the Moore household. But for that low carbohydrate diet, that red meat diet, that saturated fat-based diet, that sodium diet, I would be dead. So yes, I take great offense to this. Let's continue reading. Long-standing dietary patterns that focus on a low intake of carbohydrates along with a high intake of animal fat and protein, as well as high carbohydrate diets, are associated with an increased cardiac and non-cardiac mortality. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Did you see what they did there? They slipped it in. They started off talking about low-carb diets with a high intake of animal fat and protein, but then they say, well as high-carb diets. So the public that would read this, and it's going to be interesting to see how they parse this out in the 2020 dietary guidelines, because they're trying to lay the groundwork that, yes, we know a high-carb diet is no bueno for your heart health and overall health. But we are equating a high-carb diet with a low-carb diet. and a ketogenic diet. So they're trying to make the argument that we all need to eat a more moderate diet. We need to eat a more balanced diet. And I don't know what that's going to look like when they really try to articulate this in the dietary guidelines in 2020. But guys, this is not good. This is the first time that this has ever happened where they came out and they're basically saying low carb is a dangerous diet. At least they're acknowledging that a high carb diet is dangerous, but they're saying high carb, low carb, they're both dangerous. To which, if I was in the general public, all right, high carb diet, dangerous to your health. Low carb diet, dangerous to your health. Where is the middle ground? What does that look like? What does one person's high carb look like and another person's lower carb look like? How do you determine what that middle ground is? Is it at least 100 grams of carbs? Is it no more than 250 grams of carbs? What are we talking about here? If they don't give very clear instructions about this, what's the general public supposed to think? How are they supposed to interpret what these lifestyle guidelines mean? Which again, if you're just joining us, the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology have come out with these brand new lifestyle guidelines, which are generally a precursor to the dietary guidelines for Americans. And so in 2020, we're supposed to get the new ones, and they almost always base it on the nutrition advice that is put in these lifestyle guidelines by the American Heart Association. And they're vilifying low-carb diets. They're vilifying red meat. They're vilifying saturated fat. They're vilifying sodium, all as you're going to die of heart disease if you consume these things. They're also throwing in their high-carb diets and high-sugar diets, and that these as well. So they're equating a high-sugar, high-carb diet with low-carb diets, and both respond in the body radically differently. But don't tell that to the AHA. The increased availability of affordable, palatable, and high-calorie foods, along with decreased physical demands of many jobs, has helped to fuel the epidemic of obesity and the consequences that increases in hypertension and type 2 diabetes. So what they're saying there is there's a bunch of cheap junk food that's tasty to the tongue that's giving people a whole lot of calories. So this is all about the calorie hypothesis. This is what Stephan Guyenet, in that debate on the Joe Rogan show with Gary Taubes, this is what he was arguing. Well, it's high palatability foods, but what they're saying is high calorie foods, foods that are both high in refined carbohydrates as well as bad fats. And so it's that mix of the fats and the high carbs, the refined carbs, that's causing that. But nowhere in that do I see anything about a low-carb diet. Nowhere in that do I see that a low-carb ketogenic diet is being detrimental to your health. Guys, this is extremely serious stuff. Because if this does become the precursor to the 2020 dietary guidelines, and you've got a very prestigious group like the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology putting out these lifestyle guidelines, telling people in essence that a low-carb ketogenic diet is dangerous, do you think they're going to put a positive part of that into the 2020 dietary guidelines if the basis of those guidelines next year is on what the AHA, ACC have put out in this? I don't think so. Now, a lot of people have made the argument, well, who cares what they put in there? Nobody really pays attention to guidelines from the American Heart Association. Nobody really pays attention to the dietary guidelines for all Americans. Let's just ignore them. The problem is if you have a doctor and you start having any kind of cardiovascular issue and you go see the doctor, their standard of care and what they're giving you with handouts and stuff like that is based on this information that I read you here today. And so my dad, when he had his first heart attack when he was 48 years old, they gave him this sheet. And then they gave him the sheet again when he had another heart attack at 50, and then he had the quintuple heart bypass surgery. They gave him all these little sheets, and I'm sitting there reading the sheets going, what in the world are they telling you to do? It's disgusting, some of the stuff they're telling him to do. Cut your fat, cut your salt, eat lots of healthy whole grains, all this kind of stuff. And I get it. Once you've had a cardiovascular event, that changes things. But at the end of the day, a ketogenic diet is going to put your body in a lot better place because it's anti-inflammatory. It's going to improve all of the relevant markers in your cardiovascular health and actually improve your health. I've had a CT scan of my chest, and I highly recommend you get one. So it's called a CT heart scan. Your doctor can prescribe it for you. Go down to this office. It's about a 3-minute test. They'll take a CT scan of your chest, and it will see if there's any calcified plaque going on in your coronary arteries. There's also this thing called a CIMT, the carotid artery intima, and it can show you the thickness of your carotid artery. That also is an indicator of actual disease. Before we start pretending like disease is happening as a direct result of a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet, why don't we run those tests? Why don't we actually see what's going on rather than scaring the bejeebies out of people? By the way, I did get the CT heart scan, big fat 0. And if you get a 0 calcium score, that means you're good for probably the next 7 years before you need to test again to see how you're doing. No matter what your total cholesterol is, no matter what your other blood health markers is, if you have a big fat 0, that's a very good thing. So this is huge, you guys. And I think we, as people that have seen great results from eating a low carb diet, from eating a ketogenic diet, we've got to speak up against this kind of nonsense. And see, here's the thing. The American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, they have built this whole empire around heart health, being about procedures, being about cholesterol medications, and all of these things that make money. And guys, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm a patient advocate. I'm someone who tries to articulate things that you're just not going to hear out there in the mainstream. They don't want you to know that they're trying to obfuscate this issue, that they're trying to control the narrative. They don't want you to know that a low-carb ketogenic diet is actually making your heart a lot healthier. So they equate it with a sugary diet. They equate it with a high-carb diet. They equate it with a refined grain diet. They equate it with trans fats. They have to. They have to lump it in there with all of those other things that we know are perfectly horrible for your health. Because if you see it next to sugar, if you see it next to grains, if you see it next to trans fats, and you already have a negative connotation with all those things, then they know that you're going to come to the conclusion, oh, wow, that's really bad. Here's the ironic thing. They admit a high sugar diet is unhealthy. They admit a high carbohydrate diet is unhealthy. They admit a high refined grain diet is unhealthy. How do you come to the conclusion that the very diet you say is unhealthy, all of those things I just described, how do you come to the conclusion that a low-carb diet would also be just as harmful? How do they do that? How? Other than if you say something negative enough times about something, people start to believe it. It doesn't make any sense at all. So guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants, you're going to hear about these lifestyle guidelines from the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology. They're lifestyle guidelines, and these guidelines, you guys, are the precursor to the 2020 dietary guidelines. And in them, they're poo-pooing on low-carb diets. They're poo-pooing on ketogenic diets. They're trying to say you're a liar when you say that your health has gotten better eating that way. They don't want people to know the truth. But by golly, here on Jimmy Rants, we just drop some truth. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Welcome in. Thanks for being here on Jimmy Rants. Mike says, watching Jimmy Rants and eating a steak. It doesn't get better than this. Mike, thanks for being here, buddy. Save me a bite, man. Alberto said, let me guess before starting the rant, vegan and carbs are heart healthy for 2020. You're very smart, Alberto. Katrina says, I can't even. Yeah, welcome to my world. This is so ridiculous, says Tam. It is. And yet, it's out there. And there's no shame. They have no shame in equating a high carb diet, a high sugar diet, a high refined grain diet with a low carb ketogenic diet. I don't know how to get away with it. Is there no red meat coalition that can band together, raise money, and fight back, says Peace, Love, and Bacon Grease? There actually is a group called the Nutrition Coalition. This is Nina Teicholz's group. nutritioncoalition.org, I believe, is their website. Go check them out, you guys. I know Nina's been working very hard to impact the dietary guidelines, and no doubt this news here today is very disheartening to hear. We are made of red meat. We are not a walking carcinogenic compound. I hate the AHA, ACC, and all the similar ones, says Alberto. Yeah, what's interesting is this is the AHA, but the ADA, the American Diabetes Association, have seemed a lot more open to a low carbohydrate diet, and they're very powerful as an organization as well. So it will be interesting to see which nutritional philosophy will win out. The AHA and the cardiovascular risk concerns that they're expressing with low-carb diets, or the ADA who says, hey, look, a low-carb diet is a great option for people trying to bring blood sugar and insulin levels under control to control their type 2 diabetes. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch, you guys. And, of course, you guys know I'll be all over it. Must be those lean green beans and asparagus, talking about lean vegetable sources, yes. Bacon Grease says, the dairy industry used to have the Got Milk campaign. What have they moved to Got Cream or Got Butter? Yeah, that would be helpful. Dr. Joe says, I eat bacon and bacon fat all day long, lots of red meat and medium chain triglycerides. My triglycerides, HDL, LDLP, and HSCRP are all, in my doctor's opinion, what everyone should strive for. And see, that's the thing. They want to talk about cardiovascular mortality rates and cardiovascular health getting worse on a low-carb diet, but every relevant marker on your cholesterol panel gets better when you eat keto. Triglycerides fall like a rock, under 100. HDL goes up like a champ, over 50. HSCRP, a key inflammation marker, definitely goes below 2, and optimally it usually goes below 1 once you've done this a little while. A1C level, which is a key blood sugar marker, getting that one under 5.5 almost invariably. I could go on and on and on. Small dense LDL particles go way down when you eat keto. What are they talking about when it comes to an increased risk of cardiovascular mortality rates going up? That doesn't make sense on a low-carb ketogenic diet. It makes total sense on a high-sugar diet, total sense on a high-carb diet, total sense when you eat lots of trans fats. They didn't mention it in their list, but vegetable oil fats as well. These polyunsaturated seed oils, they are contributing to heart disease, probably much more so than anybody is letting on. So if you're still cooking with canola oil or corn oil or any of that kind of nonsense oil that's sold in the stores in clear packaging, please stop immediately. You're doing more to harm your heart than any low-carb diet ever will. This is just scary. The poor dietary advice they're putting out is fact when it's not. Yeah, Adam's wifey, I was going there a while ago. This impacts so many aspects of our culture. People are like, well, people don't pay attention to the guidelines. What's the big deal? The dietary guidelines, which come out next year, and what we're talking about here today with these AHA, ACC lifestyle guidelines, they're the precursor. So if what I just read to you guys on this Jimmy Rants becomes codified next year in the 2020 dietary guidelines, those dietary guidelines determine what people on food stamps are allowed to buy in the store. it dictates what public school lunches serve and what has to be on the plate. It affects military commissaries and what they're allowed to carry. It has ramifications and ripple effects all across our society that you probably didn't even know. And that's why this matters. That's why we talk about these things so often on Jimmy Rants. Kimberly says, I do not do veggies, so they want me to die. I refuse to give up my pork, my beef, or my chicken. No way. I have eaten meat for 48 years. Most of us have eaten meat quite often, Kimberly, that's for sure. Charming Confessions, it is hard to swallow what they want us to eat, both figuratively and literally. We all need to get our message out there and show them that keto is the way. No, they know that. This is the sad part. We don't have to convince them that keto is the way. They know it's the way. And it's starting to cut into a lot of people that have been making a whole lot of money, all at the altar of us staying sick, staying mildly sick, and needing procedures done and needing to be on prescriptions. I don't know what it's going to take to overcome that. If you take away the financial incentive, they would all embrace keto tomorrow. I guarantee you that's exactly what they would do. If it was merely about health outcomes and there was no financial incentive involved, guys, you got to know pharmaceutical companies are running scared and they have a lot of money at stake. They will spend money to continue the gravy train, so to speak. And so if the gravy train dries up and there's no more pharmaceutical sales, or if people stop having heart procedures because their ketogenic diet improves their heart health, they don't have to have open heart surgery, and they don't have to have stents and other procedures and all this kind of stuff. If that no longer has to happen, and cardiologists stop making lots and lots of money, and the powers that be stop basically doing what they've been doing and getting away with bloody murder, they don't want that to happen. I know it sounds so weird that they would put their own self-interest ahead of the patient's health, but as a patient advocate, I am articulating this for you guys so that you know exactly what's going on. This AHA, ACC lifestyle guidelines has nothing to do with protecting you and your heart health. It has everything to do with protecting the special interests that help to keep the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology in business. That's what it's about. And that's a Jimmy Rants mic drop. Jesse says, we're all retaliating. I posted my own little rant on cholesterol today. See, I'm inspiring lots of ranting lately. Alberto, it's no longer about profits anymore. It's about killing us all. Yeah, I think they'd rather see us all go away, to be honest. Tam, how do they explain all the health gains those of us on keto have achieved? I ask that question pretty often, Tam. And sadly, I haven't seen a lot of acknowledgement of the good that happens with keto. It's impossible for them to completely ignore it. They know people are getting healthy, and that may be what's making them run scared. Ashton says, I'm watching this as I'm cooking my ribeye in bacon fat. I'll stick with my steak. Thank you very much. Tam says, keto is the only way of eating that has ever worked for me in my decades of weight loss struggles. Yeah, for a lot of us. We must care about what they put on the guidelines because it can be used to ban all the bad food. See, Alberto, I bring to you guys a lot of the headlines and a lot of the new studies that have come out. Don't think that that egg study that came out recently was by accident. Don't think that that AFib story that came out recently blaming it on keto. It wasn't keto, it's 44% carbs, but blaming keto. Don't think that was by accident. None of these things that we're seeing in a negative way about ketogenic diets in 2019 is by accident. All of it, I believe, is a way to shape the narrative. Oh my gosh, keto is the worst thing ever. Why would you ever go on a ketogenic diet? So it does not become codified in the 2020 dietary guidelines. Mark my words, guys. That's what this is all about. And I will continue to speak out against that. My dad buys unsalted nuts because he eats grains and high sugar fruits. It's nuts. He believes what they put out there is sad, says Adam's wifey. Yeah. It's so tragic that we take a cholesterol number over a simple calcification number. Yeah, Tam, that CT heart scan is gold. And I have higher cholesterol. I always have. My whole life, I've had higher level of cholesterol. I want to say the last one I had was almost 300. It's been as high as 400, which interestingly, the reason it was 400 was I had some infections in my teeth where I had root canals in my early 20s. I also had some mercury amalgams. When I got all of those teeth and infections cleaned up by a holistic dentist, as well as replacing the mercury amalgams with some better materials, my cholesterol dropped 100 points in just 6 months. Now, that had nothing to do with any diet. That had nothing to do with really anything except for the underlying reason why the cholesterol was higher. The cholesterol was higher in response to the inflammation that those infections and that mercury amalgam was causing in my body. So you remove the inflammation and the inflammatory effect, and of course your cholesterol is going to come down. But again, who is going to see their doctor and the doctor saying, oh, you should go see the dentist and get that taken care of? No! They've been trained, if you see a high number on a cholesterol, you give them a statin medication to lower it. That's how they've been trained. It's such a broken system. Eating rolls from Texas Roadhouse, donuts from Krispy Kreme, and popcorn from the movies is what led me to become overweight, among other things. Since eliminating all of these things, I am 1 pound away from a 100-pound loss. Kimberly, congratulations. We're going to go ahead and give you that 100 pounds, my dear. Congratulations. That is awesome. The American College of Cardiology had a conference here in New Orleans. I saw many of them out eating lunch and drinking Coca-Cola, says Heather. Yeah, don't ever go to health conferences unless it's a keto health conference. It will shock you, the nutrition that they serve. And I've seen my friend Dr. Andreas Ianfelt from Diet Doctor. He usually goes to a lot of these conferences and he'll take pictures of the kind of lunches that they serve, and it's just a crappy garbage fest, pretty much. Another facet of government control, it should be our choice what we eat. That's right, Rebecca. Well, the good news is they can't mandate with the dietary guidelines what Americans eat, although they can with school lunches, they can with the military, they can with people on food stamps, so they do control them. So I guess that's your point. I hope they are talking about low carb, low fat being harmful, not low carb, high fat, but I doubt it. So they said in here, consuming a low carbohydrate diet, saturated fat, sodium, red meat, and processed meats like bacon, and that we should be eating a healthy plant-based Mediterranean-like diet that's high in veggies, fruits, nuts, whole grains, lean vegetables, and lean animal proteins, preferably fish, along with vegetable fiber, and that focus on low intake of carbs and high intake of animal fat and protein is associated with an increased risk of cardiac and non-cardiac mortality. They think simply by lowering carbs and eating more animal-based fats that alone will not just cause cardiovascular issues, but you're going to die from anything. They are so trying to lambaste the ketogenic diet right now, and this is a blatant attempt to do it. There's just no bones about it. That's exactly what they're trying to do. And this is, in the eyes of the consumer, a respectable group, the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology. How can you talk bad about them? I'm talking bad about them because they're talking bad about something that they should know better about. Anita says, who funds this rhetoric from the American Heart Association? This is the group driving the guidelines. So I'm not sure who funds the American Heart Association and these groups, but all I know is they have heavy, heavy influence over the dietary guidelines, which is controlled by the USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services. BS Bird says, follow the money, then you'll have that answer as to why they have put this out. Well, again, We've talked about that between the pharmaceutical companies. There's a lot of food companies also, processed junk food companies that are hurting bad as well. Gerald said, I saw your podcast with Dr. John McDougall. I like how you were nice and respectful and he was rude. What is this rant about? Well, go back and watch the replay, Gerald. By the way, if you want to have some fun, go look up episode 686 of the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show, llvlc.com, if you want to go check out my interview with the vegan Dr. John McDougall, what Gerald is talking about. And yes, I remember the episode number because it was that memorable. C-Doc says, cardiologists don't want to reverse cardiovascular disease. Stent operations are on the decline. And that's where they make their money. C-Doc, you know, you're a medical doctor. You've been in this system, and you've seen your colleagues in the medical profession. A lot of them have based their multi-millions upon millions of dollars of income on doing procedures. And trust me, I'm glad they're there if there is an acute event that happens that can help save your life. I'm not trying to poo-poo on doctors, but what I am poo-pooing is this notion that a low-carb diet is somehow causing these kinds of things to happen to your heart health, when there's no evidence that shows that low-carb should anywhere close be equated to a high-carb diet, which is what they've done in these lifestyle guidelines. Not only the medical money chain, the food companies and their influence is there in a big way. Exactly, BS Bird. We need to bombard social media with our success. Tam, a lot of us are, and we just need to keep doing it. Money, 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 says Sam. You hate to think that that's the only motivation. I would think anybody that got into the medical profession, and I'm assuming a lot of these people that are at the AHA, American Heart Association, and the American College of Cardiology, you would hope that most of them that went to medical school would have that whole notion of the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. And that they would be a patient first, looking at their health and seeing what they could do to make you optimally healthy. The problem is that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is looking first to how they can make the most money off you, keep you just sick enough so you don't die, so they can do procedures on you, to then keep you just alive enough so they can do more procedures on you in the years to come. That's how they're doing it. That's their business model. And to me, that's disgusting. It's why I have a job, so to speak, because nobody else is talking about this from the patient perspective. And the few medical doctors that are speaking out, they're doing it at the risk of their own job. You know, I think about people like Dr. Ken Berry, a medical doctor who speaks out very boldly against a lot of what his colleagues in the medical profession are doing. But he's a hero to me because he's willing to buck the trend, because he knows the way we're doing things is not actually helping people in their health. What we're doing now is leading us down a path to more disease and more problems in people's healths. And he's trying to fix that. And I think we need a whole lot more Ken Berries out there. Amy says, my heart is way better on keto. Used to have an irregular heartbeat, but it's gone now on keto. Amy, that's awesome. Sorry, first do no harm has been replaced with how do we extract as much money from our current and flawed medical system? See, Doc, you know, but you're right. First do no harm has been gone for a very long time. So guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants is you're going to hear maybe not. I'm glad we were able to bring it to you here today on Jimmy Rants, but you're going to hear about these 2019 AHA ACC lifestyle guidelines. They just released them, and they have a whole section all about nutrition. And in these nutrition guidelines, they are dismissing and equating low carb, saturated fat, sodium, red meat in the same category as sugar, refined grains, and high carb diets. And to me, that's an utter travesty. That is an utter obfuscation of what a ketogenic diet is. And if this is what they're going to do, you guys, we've got to fight back harder. Knowledge is power, and now you have this knowledge, and the problem with this these new lifestyle guidelines is they're going to influence next year the dietary guidelines which come out. And we must remain vigilant. We must keep sharing, keep getting the word out. Do me a favor. When you see these Jimmy Rants go up on YouTube, go grab the link on YouTube and then share it everywhere across social media. Because I think these kind of things that happen in our culture that have an influence that they're probably not going to hear in a lot of other places, we got to get the word out. So if this resonated with you today and you're fired up about it, when this gets posted to YouTube a little bit later, go grab the link and go send it out to everybody you know across your social media, especially on Facebook. They actually let you directly link a video from YouTube right there on Facebook, and there's a hyperlink and then watch it right there. It'll be so powerful, you guys. So please do that for me. Kimberly says, thanks for always keeping us on the cutting edge. That is my job. And thankfully, with the position I'm in, I get access to a lot of information that you probably would not. So I'm more than happy to keep doing that here for you guys here on Jimmy Rants. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, hop on over there and see that we start on Instagram. We do a couple of live videos every single day. So go follow me on Instagram at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live in the content, just like all my Jimmy Rantsers did here today. Thank you guys for being here. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. But after 24 hours, it does disappear. Pop on over to YouTube, type in a keyword search, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Finally, the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form is on the Jimmy Rants podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. I always love when I'm doing the little outro like that. I drop about half of the followers. But those of you that stick around, you never know what I'm going to say at the end. But I have nothing to say, so until next time, we'll see you then.